Hey, how's it going guys? It's Nate here. And Fallout 4 sends players to an almost unrecognizable post-nuclear US of A, where the fires and radiation of war have replaced old creatures with new mutants and old governments with new primitive conflicting factions. And as the sole survivor explores and familiarizes themselves with this dystopian-esque Fallout universe, we're all too often left with a number of unanswered questions or unexplained occurrences that can leave us very spooked, very intrigued, or sometimes a little bit of both. So today we'll be diving into another handful of such instances, as we take a look at 5 more mysteries you may have missed in Fallout 4. Part 3, I think. Starting off, we have whatever happened at Listening Post Bravo. Listening Post Bravo is a pre-war US military radio bunker northeast of the MedTech Research Building. The bunker's divided into 2 sections. First, a fortified entrance/reception office, and below that, the bunker itself, which can be accessed via elevator. The area is quite small, but loaded with a variety of consoles, computers, and other things that just look like they belong down here. Strangely, there's also a gap in one of the walls leading to a small crevice, where a very unfriendly Yao Guai will be hiding. So, come a bit prepared. But once you've gotten the gist of this place and pacified its angry inhabitant, take a look at the lone, still functioning terminal, as it tells a very spooky tale. There's a number of entries that would take forever to read individually, however they essentially describe the experiences of a Sergeant J.P. Rensky, who was apparently stationed here for a month by the army to scan for frequencies and report back to DC. Rensky wasn't allowed to go back up to the surface. Effectively, he was stuck in this bunker to eat, sleep, and do everything all alone until his month ended. The entries state that his first few days were rather uneventful, but shortly after his arrival, one day the sergeant began detecting strange repeating messages in the low-band frequencies he was watching. Phrases like, internal void, dreams are getting darker, and blood runs so still, as well as the letters D-E-K. These frequencies went on for about an hour, then stopped cold. Obviously a bit freaked out, he sent the messages to DC to be inspected, but didn't hear anything back. Days after this incident, the soldier then started to hear a loud banging on the elevator door leading to his bunker. That had our hero quite terrified. He was somewhere around 100 feet underground in an undisclosed secret location by himself. Now something was banging on the other side of that elevator door. This too went on for about an hour, and the sergeant even states that at one point he got his emergency laser rifle out. Eventually, Rensky heard back from DC. They claimed those tapes he sent in with those big scary messages were actually blank. There was nothing on them. The sergeant then went back over those tapes and realized that they were right. There was nothing on those tapes. CENTCOM informed the man that they believed he could be losing his mind as a result of the isolation, and promised to dispatch someone to relieve Rensky as soon as possible. And that's the last terminal entry we get to read. Presumably the bombs fell before the Sarge's replacement arrived. So what went down here? What were the messages and the banging that the soldier was hearing? Well, there's a couple of theories. One, perhaps the least interesting, is that Rensky was just genuinely losing his mind, and that was that. But others argue there's something deeper that could have been at play. As mentioned, we're not given the exact dates nor times when these terminal logs were made, which has led to the suspicion that perhaps the banging Rensky heard at the elevator door that one day was actually the bombs falling. Or perhaps the soldier guarding the entrance begging to be let down, and the US military simply didn't tell Rensky anything, as they wanted him to keep doing his job unfettered by whatever emotional trauma knowledge of the Great War would invoke. There's also the possibility that the man was being experimented on as a part of some secret project, that the government was either injecting something into his air supply or intentionally trying to see how he'd react when placed under extreme isolated stress. We do know that ghosts and the supernatural and paranormal are all seemingly confirmed to exist forces in the Fallout universe, with places like Grantchester Mansion, the Dunwich Borers, and whatnot. So a good old-fashioned haunting is indeed not too far-fetched. Lastly, a worthy mystery in its own right, there's the question of how did that Yao Guai get down here? And if there was only one man stationed in this bunker, then why is it that Animal's Cave is surrounded by human skeletons? So many questions, not nearly as many answers. Next on our list, what lurks in the seas of the irradiated post-war world has always been a bit of a subject of perplexation among the community. We have the option to do quite a bit of swimming in Fallout 4, and even Fallout 3 in New Vegas for that matter, though we never find any actual life form swimming about in the water. However, something that captured the attention of quite a few players is a very intriguing conversation the sole survivor has the opportunity to listen in on when at Bunker Hill, between a couple of caravan workers or raiders, talking about a ghoul whale.
So one day, my grandpappy was egging. It was a foul day, fog so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. He was stumbling along and then he heard a tremendous clamoring from the ocean, like nothing he'd ever heard before or since. He stood still for a long time. The fog cleared for a brief moment, and that's when he saw the outline of the great behemoth. Massive. Bigger than anything you or I will ever see. Old Peg. A giant blue ghoul whale. A ghoul whale? Yeah. As the fog gathered, he saw that great beast emerge back into the deep, and my grandpappy fled for the first and last time in his life. Ask any of the old-timers, and they'll all agree. Something ancient and terrifying haunts the sea.
This whole ghoul whale dialogue sequence initially sparked quite a bit of enthusiasm amongst the community, as people rushed back into the oceans hoping to find some evidence of such a creature. It certainly seems possible, at least by Fallout standards, that if humans and certain creatures can ghoulify and be mutated by rads, whales wouldn't be the exception. It quickly became clear that such a beast didn't exist in the base game. But some evidence was found suggesting that Bethesda, at least at some point or another during Fallout's development, cut some ocean-related content from the game. There are unused assets in Fallout 4's files related to a quest named 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and even an unused harpoon gun that would have produced bubbles when fired, implying that underwater combat was planned. Upon its announcement, the Far Harbor DLC renewed a good bit of hope that this ghoul whale beast would be elaborated upon. What with the DLC taking place on an island in a state famous for whaling. Alas, when it came out, while we were able to find the skeletons of many a mammal scattered across Far Harbor's shores, the existence of a surviving ghoul whale, or whales, was left completely untackled. And thus, whether this creature is still out there is something only the seas know, and the seas are staying quiet. Coming in at number 3, what happened to Dr. Zimmer? In Fallout 3, during the quest, The Replicated Man, we were introduced to a fellow calling himself Dr. Zimmer, claiming to be working on behalf of a shadowy organization called the Institute, searching for an escaped android in Rivet City. Now, bear in mind, this was back in Fallout 3, so at the time, the very nature of what the Institute was quite mysterious to everyone. We'd ultimately learned that that escaped android was a security officer, and had the option of either concealing his secret or revealing him to Zimmer. Regardless, that quest is the extent of your interaction with Zimmer in Fallout 3. But in Fallout 4, 10 years later, we learn that the elderly man is still playing an active role working for the Institute's Synth Retention Bureau, though he's away on a shady mission, and we're not quite sure what he's after. If you speak to Dr. Ao, head of the SRB, he'll inform you that he's not actually the head of that department. He's just filling in for Dr. Zimmer, the real head of the SRB, but who's out away currently tracking some sort of high-profile escaped synth until he returns.
If you're the acting head of the SRB, who are you filling in for?
Dr. Zimmer holds that position. He's supervising the retrieval of some of the more high-profile units. In his absence, I keep things running smoothly.
Now, things get even weirder if we look at a terminal in Father's room, where, in an entry titled Status Reports, under SRB, he ominously notes that Dr. Zimmer is, quote, still offline. Now, in Institute lingo, offline doesn't mean dead or anything, it's just the term they use to describe operatives and agents that they're not currently in contact with. So not only is Zimmer pursuing some weird high-priority target, but he's not even in contact with the Institute while on it. which is really odd because the Institute is like arguably the most technologically advanced human faction in the known world right now. So whatever Zimmer's up to has to be unique. For fourth spot, what is the Sight? Mama Murphy's unique gift, the Sight, as she calls it, plays a somewhat pivotal role in the early game, as it allows her to see specific events in the future and gain bits and pieces of knowledge she otherwise shouldn't be able to know. This power is what leads her and the group to Sanctuary, and assuming you take her advice, you to Diamond City for your first time. Of course, the Sight is triggered by use of specific chems, which only makes it stranger. But what is it? How was Mama Murphy able to obtain it, and why? Well, in Fallout New Vegas, we can meet a boy known as the Forecaster, in possession of a nearly identical power, with some deviations. The boy, much like Mama Murphy, can predict future events, and offers a great deal of understanding about things that he really shouldn't, and sells the courier his thoughts for a small sum of caps. The kid, unlike Murphy, doesn't need chems to trigger his visions, and even goes so far as to wear a unique headband to keep them from occurring and bothering him too frequently. Play, as his real name is, calls this process not the Sight, but thinking, which is a little less original. So what's the scoop here? It could be that select people with select genes had some sort of psychic response triggered in their heads by radiation after the bombs fell. Or, as we've touched upon, the paranormal isn't something the Fallout universe shies away from, so this power could be entirely unrelated to rads at all. No matter the case, it would seem this Sight or thinking ability isn't exclusive to just one person in the Wasteland, and that's what makes me think this probably won't be the last time we encounter it in Fallout. And finally, last on our list, perhaps among the most heavily debated mysteries shown off in this video, are you, the player's character that being, a synth? Indeed, this is a topic which has spawned quite a lot of debate, and there's some pretty reasonable evidence supporting the theory itself. Namely, within the Institute's bioscience lab, a terminal can be found with an entry titled Unique Project. It's pretty short, so I'll just read it to you. Quote, "Father has granted clearance for a rather unique project. In select Gen 3 units, the synthetic brain is indeed capable of accepting specific enhancements to the visual cortex, basal ganglia, and right parietal cortex. The result is substantially improved combat effectiveness due to two factors. 1. An increased understanding of weapon accuracy, to the extent that the combatant can actually visualize the percentage of effectively hitting targets or smaller areas on those targets. 2. An altered sense of perception that mimics the effect of slowing or even stopping time. Recommend we commence surgery and field trials on appropriate operatives in the near future." End quote. Now, these 2 points, actual visualization of hit percentage chance and the slowing down of time, are literal perfect descriptions of the VAT system used by us players. The Institute suggests that some of their Gen 3 units, basically the top of the line ones, are capable of demonstrating such a power. The VAT system has of course been a staple of Fallout games for quite a while now. But admittedly, we're never really given a good, solid, mechanical explanation behind how it works or what its connection to the game is. This entry is very much the only time such a feature is even referenced. Additionally, the Far Harbor DLC sort of toys at the idea of the player being a synth, during an especially notable conversation with Dima, where he really prods at you and obviously tries to get you to ask yourself some serious questions.
But I suspect there could be another reason you came to us. Tell me, are you a synth?
How would I even know?
I'm afraid if you're looking for some biological test we can do, there isn't any. None that aren't fatal. Instead, you have to look for the signs, holes in someone's memory. If you don't mind, what's the first thing you can remember?
I remember being in my house the day the bombs fell. We ran to the vault. We were frozen. I was the only survivor.
No memories before then? Just a single day and then waking up alone? We so easily accept what's presented to us as the truth, don't we?
The way that he approaches your first memory being the falling of the bombs is really provoking. Us being just players, we know it doesn't really mean anything. Of course we've never played anything before the game begins. But how Bethesda's then able to use that fact to suggest maybe our character doesn't remember anything is really neat. Could the real sole survivor have just died at Vault 111 all those years ago and been replaced with a synthetic replica? Could it be that Sanctuary Hill's opening scene we played through was just an Institute implanted memory? We may never know, but it's definitely a fun question to ask. And with that, we are going to wrap up. 5 more spooky mysteries in Fallout 4. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Which of the ones we tackled today did you find to be the most thought-provoking or your favorite? And what are your own theories behind some of what we covered? Leave a comment down below. As always, like ratings are very much appreciated. Again, thanks for coming, and hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everyone.